Welcome back. Oklahoma is now the latest state to enact a law restricting transgender health care. It joins 14 other states with similar laws after Governor Kevin Stitt signed a bill yesterday banning minors from receiving gender-affirming care into law yesterday. Efforts to roll back transgender rights have become a major part of legislative agendas in Republican-led state houses. Yesterday, a Missouri judge temporarily stayed that state's ban on transgender care for minors and adults from going into effect. In Nebraska, Democratic State Senator Megan Hunt is under an ethics investigation for opposing anti-transgender legislation. Critics say Hunt would have benefited financially from improved Medicare benefits because she has a transgender child. And in Montana, the state's first and only transgender lawmaker, Zooey Zephyr, and the ACLU are suing the Speaker of the House there after Zephyr was censured and barred from the House chamber last week for comments she made during debate around a transgender care ban. That bill became law on Friday. For more on that lawsuit, I'm joined by the ACLU's Montana director, Alex Raitt. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
So break down this case. What are the arguments that you are making here?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I feel like we've officially entered the twilight zone here in Montana. Never in my legal career would I have expected that you would see a duly elected representative to the Montana legislature essentially silenced and expelled for doing exactly what she was elected to do, which is to represent the voices of her 11,000 constituents. So when Representative Zephyr was censured by the House Speaker and the full House of Representatives, the only recourse that she had available was to file an emergency lawsuit, essentially arguing that her First Amendment rights have been violated. And it's a well-known fact that an individual who's elected to the legislature does not lose their right to free speech when they walk in the doors of the state capitol, and we intend to vindicate those rights.
And you are making essentially a freedom of speech argument, but are there broader implications for the transgender rights movement and for the rights of transgender people all across the country?
Yeah, well, I think that, this is not necessarily an issue related to transgender rights, right? I mean, we are clearly seeing differential treatment based on who Representative Zephyr is. And certainly we have seen an onslaught of legislation targeting the trans community throughout the 2023 legislative session. But at the end of the day, regardless of your identity, regardless of your political party, you have an obligation to represent the voices of your constituents when you're elected to the state legislature. And that's exactly what Representative Zephyr did here. So the fact that she's silenced has less to do with her transgender status than the fact that she is speaking out on an issue of important public concern, and her voice needs to be heard in that debate.
How confident are you in this suit based on what you know about Montana? You're suing, I should say, the Montana District Court. So how confident are you in your suit based on that?
Yeah, well, no lawyer will tell you that they have a crystal ball. But I do think that, we have very strong legal claims. I think that the biggest challenge for us right now is time, because we're looking at a situation where the legislature, which here in Montana only meets every other year for 90 days, is scheduled to adjourn imminently. And so what we need is an emergency order from the court reinstating all of Representative Zephyr's privileges immediately. And that's particularly critical right now because the state is currently set to debate perhaps the most consequential bill impacting all of Montanans, which is the state budget, House Bill 2. So we need to see immediate action in order to make sure that Representative Zephyr and her 11,000 constituents are heard on this particularly critical piece of legislation.
Moving to the overall transgender medical care ban that was signed into law Friday that we just talked about, is the ACLU poised to fight that? You've said that that's another case that you will take up. What is the timeline of that? What will that look like?
Yeah, that case is imminent. So obviously, life-saving, gender-affirming care is critically important to trans youth across Montana. This is a matter of life and death. Representative Zephyr was not being hyperbolic or inflammatory when she said that the legislature has blood on their hands for purposes of passing Senate Bill 99. And so we intend to vigorously challenge that particularly damaging bill in the courts, and you can expect to see that very, very soon.
And over 15 states have some form of ban in place. What is your national strategy as it relates to transgender rights?
Well, I mean, I think it differs state by state, but fair to say that you see copycat legislation being duplicated, among states that have a conservative majority. And the anti-trans agenda has proliferated. And this is nothing new. I mean, these folks have been targeting vulnerable communities for decades, and this is only the latest iteration. And I will tell you that ACLU and our allies will continue to stand up and vindicate those rights and make sure that oppressive bills like Senate Bill 99 are not the law of the land.
Do you anticipate that your fight in Montana, that some of these other fights that you plan to take on will go all the way to the Supreme Court?
Well, we focus a lot of our litigation here in state court, relying upon a really unique and special Montana Constitution that contains robust protections for individual dignity and privacy. So the likelihood of a state court claim going up to the U.S. Supreme Court is relatively low. And we have seen that both our district courts and the Montana Supreme Court has jealously defended the most important bedrock rights that exist in the state constitution. So we hope and expect that these fights will unfold in state courts, but certainly, there's always the possibility that something will go up all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
All right, Alex Raitt, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through your lawsuit. We will stay in touch with you as you continue to fight this. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.